Hello and welcome back. We are nearly at the end of day one. Make sure you turn your volume up if you haven't done so already. My name is Trent McLaren, happy to be your host, co-founder here at the firm. Today is our 3 p.m. session, and we are talking about how to use AI to turn meeting transcripts into tasks, content, training guides, and more, with prompts included. But before we do that, the housekeeping, if you're familiar with already, all these sessions are being recorded, and this is actually powered by Vinyl, and you're going to see and hear a little bit about that in today's session that you're about to join. Thank you for being here and thank you for checking that out. All sessions are being recorded, so you can catch this later. You can share it with a team member or colleague, whatever it may be, that's fine. Second point, all of these points are CPD claimable. So if you've not seen this housekeeping before, you can get all of your CPD points. That's powered by AccrediWise. We'll have details on that once we get to the conclusion of the summit. And if you haven't done so already, make sure you tag us online. If you want enjoying the session, you're having a great time, take a photo, take a selfie, put it on LinkedIn, tag us and the Growth Club using the hashtag, tag the firm, and you go in the draw to win $500 worth of gift cards. You can see I'm getting through these faster because I know most of you have seen this by now. Huge thank you to our partners, and namely, we're going to thank the team from Vinyl because this is the session you're about to hear from them. And this session, as said, is with Jordan Vickery, who is both co-founder of the firm, but also co-founder of Vinyl. This session, we're going to teach you how to use AI to turn meeting transcripts into tasks, content, training guides, and more, prompts included. Excited to hand over to Jordan. Jordan, please take it away. I look forward to seeing everything you're about to teach us. Enjoy, everybody. Let's get stuck in.
Hey guys, thank you for taking the time to join us for another session at the Growth Club Summit today. Hope you've had an amazing time at the event so far. There's been some incredible sessions on that I've seen on the agenda. I also had the pleasure of sharing a session with Martin Brennan, which maybe you guys have seen already, I'm not sure. But in the next 40 minutes, what I wanted to use this time for was to share with you how you can use AI to turn meeting transcripts into proposals, training, social media posts, and more. So there's a lot of ground that I'm going to cover. Most of it's going to be super practical, super actionable stuff that you can take away and start using right away. I've got a number of prompts, I've got a guide, I've got a custom GPT, all to give away to you free of charge, so that the moment this session ends, you can go away and start implementing all of what I shared with you to help turn your meeting transcripts into some really helpful stuff in your firm. So a bit about me. My name is Jordan. I'm one of the co-founders here at Vinyl. Vinyl is an AI note taker built specifically for the accounting and bookkeeping community. I'm also a global director at an agency called Journey. Journey works with software vendors in and around the accounting ecosystem. And I've spent the best part of 12 years working with accountants and bookkeepers at the kind of intersection of growth and technology, predominantly in the UK, but also elsewhere as well. So there's quite a few things we're going to be covering. We're going to be moving pretty quickly. So make sure you've got pen and paper to take notes, or maybe you've even got a meeting note taker in here taking notes for you, who knows. So a few things that we're going to be covering. The first is why meeting transcripts are actually an untapped goldmine for accounting firms. There is so much value in there that firms don't realize they're sitting on. And I want to take just a few minutes to unpack that and help you to understand the potential of what is currently living within those meeting transcripts. The second thing that I want to look at is then what tools can you use to capture these transcripts? What are some of the AI note-taking tools available on the market today? We'll then be moving into AI models. So different AI models, things like ChatGPT that you can use, how you use them, but also things to keep in mind, such as security, because it's super important that you understand the security risks of using certain tools as you start to use them. We're then going to be looking at something called prompt engineering. Prompt engineering is really simple. It's just a fancy term for saying, how do you write better prompts? So we're going to be digging deep into actually helping you to write much better prompts that will in turn help you to get much better outputs from using things like ChatGPT. And then to close things off, I've got 13 ready to swipe meeting transcript prompts that I'll give to you as a free giveaway that you can take away and start implementing as soon as the session ends, really. And I'll also be demoing a few of these in the session today as well. So why are meeting transcripts an untapped goldmine for accounting firms? Some of you might recognize Jason Statz. He is an accounting AI thought leader based out of the US, creates a ton of super interesting and actionable content about how AI is and will impact the world of accounting. And in one of his many podcasts, he shared this quote, which is really relevant. And he said that one thing that every accounting firm produces on an ongoing basis is advice. And that advice is usually in the context of a meeting. If only there was a way we could find a way to capture that then there are some really powerful things we can do to it. And Jason's absolutely right. There are some incredibly powerful things that we can do with this advice, as well as the other things that get shared in meetings. And I just want to take a few moments to run through what some of those opportunities are. So meeting transcripts, whether it's with your clients or whether it's with people in your team, can contain a number of things. They could contain advice. You could have sat with a client and given them advice on a specific accounting or tax matter. They could contain testimonials where the client is singing your praises and saying how great you are to work with and how much of a difference you've made to their business. They can also contain CRM data. So think about some of the data points about your clients or even prospects that you might capture and put into a CRM system. For example, industry, size of business in terms of revenue, size of business in terms of number of employees, all of those things, that data can live in a meeting transcript. So if they're telling you in a meeting, you might be writing it down and then going to update your CRM, but you might be able to automate that using some of the things that I'll show you later. Transcripts can also contain processes in the form of you delivering something by following a process, therefore the process lives within the transcript. They can contain social media content. So if you sat with a client in a meeting and you've talked about a specific tax matter or a specific accounting matter, that could then be repurposed into social media content that you can use to attract more prospects. They can contain technical knowledge in the form of, again, advice that you've delivered, and that technical knowledge could be used for clients. It could also be used to train internal team members. And there's a few other things here as well. Client FAQs, client sentiment in terms of how positive your clients speaking about things, additional service opportunities. Are they asking for things or talking about things where you might be able to help them with a service that you're not currently delivering, as well as coaching and feedback, being able to take transcripts that potentially other people in your team might have produced and then use those to give them coaching and feedback on how they can improve deliver those meetings. So as you can see, there is a lot that can live within a meeting transcript. There is so much you can do with it, but really it all comes down to how do you capture these transcripts in the first place. So there's a number of tools available on the market. You've got things like Copilot. They have a built-in kind of note-taking capability. So does Zoom. They have their Zoom AI that will also take notes and a transcript during the meeting. And then you have a couple of standalone providers, Fireflies, Otter AI, Fathom. These note takers are all really good. They sit across a huge market, not just accountants and bookkeepers. They don't specialize in one particular industry, whereas Vinyl is the one that we're building. It's purpose built for the accounting and bookkeeping community. But this session is not about Vinyl. Really, my ask of you at this stage is that you at least choose one of these, because in order to do some of the stuff that I'm going to share with you, you are going to need to capture meeting transcripts up front. I don't mind which you use. Naturally, I have a bias, but I think ultimately it's beneficial for any firm to be using AI note taker regardless, just that they're capturing this stuff and have all of that stuff documented and on file as well. So how do we go about extracting insights from meeting transcripts using AI? There's a really simple workflow and process that we need to follow. There's 3 steps to it, really. So the first step is all about the prompt, which is the kind of instructions that you're giving to the large language model, such as ChatGPT, as well as the transcript. The second step is actually putting that into a large language model. ChatGPT is the one that I'm going to be showing you in today's session, but other ones are available, and I'll be talking through those in a couple of slides' time. And then the third step is really the output, what actually comes out of the model once we've put the prompt in and given it the transcript. And then there's a nice arrow back there at the bottom where it's really important when you're using tools like this to think about feedback loops, not just taking the output and going, that's good or that's bad, but then saying, okay, it's 75% of the way there. What's missing? What isn't quite right? Is it the formatting? Has it missed some kind of key context around the type of client or the type of firm that I am? And you can use that feedback to drive and improve the upfront prompts. And this is something that I see, a mistake that I see a lot of people making when they're using tools like this, is that they'll get an output and then they'll just try to edit the output directly. Or they'll say, oh, well, that didn't work. It didn't get it exactly as I wanted to. And 9 times out of 10, what that comes back to is that the prompt actually wasn't strong enough in the first place, and you didn't ask it to do what you wanted it to do. So always, whenever you get anything out of one of these large language models, go back to the original prompt and figure out what can I update in the instructions so that the output is as good as it needs to be every time going forwards. So we're going to look at each of these steps in detail now. So creating your perfect prompt every time. I've heard this a few times recently on LinkedIn and Facebook groups, even in-person events, where firms are saying things like AI doesn't work, or the tax advice that it gave was wrong, or the wrong year, or it's a load of rubbish, or it's not relevant for the types of clients that I work with. And I get it, it's absolutely not a perfect technology today. It's still very much improving. We're still very much figuring out how best to use it. But from having some of these conversations and doing a bit of digging into what's actually happening, 9 times out of 10, what this is coming back to is that the initial upfront prompts weren't good enough in the first place. The actual instructions that you gave to the large language model, for example, ChatGPT, weren't as strong as they need to be. And a really easy analogy to think about this is garbage in, garbage out. You'll be really familiar with this in the world of bookkeeping, where if all of the data that's coming in is rubbish, it's not been coded properly, there's missing data, there's duplicate data, anything you try to do with that afterwards in terms of forecasting or preparing management accounts, it's going to be totally garbage because all of the data that's come in just wasn't as good enough as it needed to be. And this is exactly the same for models like ChatGPT, because without a well-written prompt, without really clear, well-structured instructions, you're essentially letting them guess, you're essentially letting them waffle, and you're allowing them to generate generic fluff and advice. Whereas if you give them a really clear and structured prompt, then actually what they can do is they can act like a very, very helpful assistant. They can save you time, they can improve the quality of the outputs, and ultimately they can make your life a lot easier. Another really easy way to think about this is delegating work to a team member. If you want that team member to be successful, you're going to give them as much of context, as much instruction, as much support and feedback as you can in order to help them understand how to deliver the task the way you want it to be. You're not just going to send them 5 words and say, do this, blah, 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 blah. Of course, they're not going to get it perfectly right. And this is the exact mindset that you need to keep in mind when it comes to using tools like ChatGPT, especially when it comes to feeding meeting transcripts in and getting everything out the way that you want to. So what does a perfect prompt look like? How do we make sure that when we're prompting and using tools like ChatGPT, we're using them as efficiently as we can be? The prompting process is really simple. There's 6 steps to think about, and I'll go through each of those in a bit more detail over the next few minutes. So the first is persona. Who do you want ChatGPT to be? Do you want it to be a helpful assistant? Do you want it to be a senior accountant? Do you want it to be a marketing professional? Then you've got task. What do you actually want it to do? The third is format. How should the output look? What do you specifically want? Is it a table? Is it a document? Is it bullet points? Be as specific as you can be. The fourth is the context. What should it know in order to be successful? What additional context do you think that you currently have that actually sharing that with it will improve the quality of the output? The fifth is an example. If you have an example of what you'd like it to look like or what successful does look like, then it's really helpful to share that with it. And then the sixth, and probably one of the more important ones, is constraints in terms of what should it not do or what should it avoid. And in my own experience, I actually find that putting more constraints in really helps to focus the quality of the output that you get. So let's go through each of these steps in a bit more detail. So persona is, who would you like something like ChatGPT to act as? And this really helps to shape the tone, the style, and the mindset that it uses when approaching a task. And a really simple example here is asking it to be a senior accountant versus a personal assistant. Using those 2 different personas is likely to get 2 very different outputs depending on the task that you're giving it. So I've got a couple of examples on the slide here. You're a qualified accountant with 10 years of experience in tax planning for SMEs versus you're a content writer with deep knowledge of bookkeeping for trades businesses. Each of those personas is super valuable, but it really depends on the context of what you're using it for. So it's worth having a think about what is the persona that you would like the large language model to adopt at the very beginning of the prompt. The second thing, which is pretty much where most people start and end when it comes to prompting, is the task. What is the core instruction that you're asking it to complete? Now, vague requests will often lead to vague answers, so it's really important that you're as clear as possible. You give it structured items if there's multiple items that it needs to consider, and that will lead to a much better and much more helpful output. So I've included an example below here, which says, from the transcript below, identify 3 key topics. For each topic, suggest a blog title, include 2 short quotes per topic, and list the ideas in a bullet point summary. That is nice and granular, giving it 4 steps. It's very clear instructions, whereas a bad version of that might be, from the transcript, identify three blogs with some quotes. It's a little bit more vague. It's not giving it the kind of clear step-by-step process that we'd like it to follow. The third thing is formatting. What is the structure or layout you would like the output to follow? Doing this up front actually just saves you time once you've got the output from ChatGPT. So, you might ask it to do something, it will give it you in whatever format it deems best, but it might not be the format you need it in. You might need it in bullet points, or you might need it in a table, or you might need it in a document format. So tell it that up front, and it will just save you a ton of time and make sure that when you get the output, it's already in something that's actionable and easy to use for you. I'm going to actually show you how to pull all of this stuff together a little bit later on and give you some really clear examples that you can swipe and start using right away. The fourth thing is context. So context is super important because it's all of the background information that will help to eliminate ChatGPT making any assumptions. So some examples here that I've included are, I'm an accountant supporting startups and sole traders. That's helpful context versus just saying I'm an accountant, because in that situation, it could assume that you work with any kind of business of all shapes and sizes, whereas here you're saying specifically startups and sole traders. Or this email is for a client who uses QuickBooks and doesn't understand tax terminology. Again, really helpful context, because you're saying this is the software they use and this is their kind of literacy in terms of understanding the topic that we're explaining to them. The third example, we're preparing for year-end filings and want to highlight common mistakes. Again, just really, really helpful context so that when ChatGPT or whatever model you use is completing the task, they have all of the background information that they need to be successful. Again, come back to that example of delegating a piece of work to somebody in the team. I would like to assume that if you're delegating something to somebody in your team, you would give them that context so that they understand why they're doing the task and why it's important. The fifth thing is examples. Again, if you have a model or a template or an example of what the output needs to look like in mind, it's really helpful to share that up front, because what that will do is it will eliminate any back and forth, and it would just mean that the large language model can copy that exact style and give it you in a way that you want. So if you've got a previous monthly summary of something that you created for a client, for example, and you'd like ChatGPT to create another one, upload that example and ask it to create it in that exact format. And it will just save you a ton of time and save you going back and forth and saying, no, I didn't want it like that. I needed it in this format instead. And then the sixth and final thing is constraints. So what is it that you don't want the large language model to do? Because naturally, what you've probably found if you've used these tools, and I'm sure you have, is that they can be the world's most convincing liars. Whatever they say, they believe 110%, even if it's not true. And they do have a tendency to try and fill in gaps if they're not sure, unless you tell them not to. So it's really helpful to be explicit and actually limit them and say, don't do this, only look at that, only think about this, because that will mean that they're much more focused in terms of their response. So some common constraints that you could use would be, only use the text that I provided, don't make anything up. That's a really useful one if you're using things like meeting transcripts. Don't reference government schemes not mentioned in the transcript so that it doesn't go away and start pulling in all kinds of stuff that's not relevant. Things like don't use American spelling. If you're based in the UK or Australia, you've probably realized that these things default to Americanized language, and it's not that helpful because then you have to go and change all the Z's to S's and it's super time consuming. So adding these kind of common constraints in up front will just mean that the output you get is much more accurate and much more tailored to how you need it to be. So there are kind of 6 steps, 6 things to think about when it comes to building prompts. And I'll just give you a really quick overview of what this might look like in practice. So I've got a prompt on the screen here. I'll just read it through with you. So you're a senior accountant supporting small service-based businesses. From the transcript below, extract the top 3 financial concerns mentioned by the client. For each concern, suggest a blog title that would be useful for clients with the same issue. For example, this could be concern, cash flow worries, blog title, how to remove cash flow worries and sleep easy at night. Include a short client quote and reply in a table format. Only use content from the transcript. Don't assume or add anything else. Nice, well-structured prompt, lots of things in there. So let's quickly run through and kind of highlight what are all of the elements in here from those 6 steps that I ran through previously. So persona, you are a senior accountant. Task, saying from the transcript, extract out these items and suggest a blog title. Context, you're supporting small service-based businesses. We're not just saying you're an accountant that could work with anyone. We're giving it that very specific context to think about. Example, giving them an example of what this could look like within the transcript. Format, include a short quote and reply in a table format. And then finally, constraints, only use content from the transcript, don't assume or add anything else. So hopefully that allows you to just see how all of these things come together to form a really nice, well-structured prompt where we're essentially trying to remove all margin of error, all margin of assumption, and make sure that the output we're getting from the model that we're using is as tailored to us and as accurate as it can be. So one of the things that we have built for you, which is going to be a free giveaway, is a custom GPT to help you create prompts in seconds. So I know that you're probably thinking, this all sounds great, Jordan, it makes a lot of sense, but I don't have time to be writing out these huge prompts with these 6 components in. And I'm exactly the same. I go into something like ChatGPT and I just want to use it as quickly as possible. But actually spending a bit of time up front on the prompt makes a ton of sense because it tends to save you so much more time on the other end. But because I want to save you guys even more time, what I've done is I've actually built for you, trained on Google's prompt engineering course, as well as some other prompt engineering resources that I've found and used well over the internet. I've built this custom GPT that will essentially build prompts for you. So you can go to this custom GPT and you could say, write me a prompt for extracting blog ideas out of meeting transcripts. And it will go through and it'll add all of this detail in. And where it's not sure, it'll ask you a few short qualifying questions for that extra information. So I'll just give you a quick run through of what this looks like. So you come into the prompt engineer and you say, help me to create a prompt. And you say what for? So for extracting FAQs from multiple client conversations. And then it's going to go and do its thing. It's going to reference all of the training and materials that we've given it. And it's probably going to come back with some qualifying questions just because it's not sure on some of those specific items like context, etc., that it's going to need. So it's going to say, what exactly do you want the FAQ to achieve? Do you have any sample transcripts I can reference? What output format would you like? Are there any constraints? And do you have an example? So we'll just quickly go through and answer those questions. So what do I want to achieve? I want to reduce being asked the same question time and time again by my clients, but also I want to create some nice marketing content. I don't have any sample transcripts to provide right now. Format wise, table format would be great in plain text, just so that it's really easy for me to copy out. The main constraint is that I only want them to reference information in the transcripts. I don't want them to go and add other FAQs that they found on the internet, for example. And then example wise, I'll just give it an example of what I would like this to look like within the tables. FAQ in terms of what the question is, client quote or question, and then finally what my response is to that FAQ. So just a few quick, simple answers just to give it some more information to fill in the gaps. It's now going to go away. It's going to think about all the stuff that I've given it. It's going to reference the training that we provided to it based on the Google Prompt Engineering course and a few other things. And what it's going to do is it's going to give us a ready-to-use prompt that we can then take and copy paste into something like ChatGPT, if this is what you use, along with your meeting transcript to give you the best possible output. So you can see here, it's starting to write a really nice, clear prompt. So at the top, you've got the persona. You're an experienced accounting firm knowledge assistant. Your task is to do, read conversation transcripts. Here are your instructions. Here are the constraints. Don't invent information. Here's the format that we'd like it to follow. And here's the example of what this could look like in practice. So only taken less than 2 minutes, and you've got a really nice detailed prompt there that is going to substantially improve the success of that specific task when you come to use it with something like ChatGPT. That custom GPT, I'm going to give you access to that towards the end of the session. Don't worry. I've got a QR code you can scan or a link you can use. And that means that you can go and access this custom GPT and use it as much as you need to in order to build the best possible prompts for your firm. Okay, so we've looked at prompt engineering. We've looked at how do we create the perfect prompt for extracting information out of meeting transcripts. The next thing that I want to look at is choosing your preferred large language model. So I've used the term large language model a few times already. I probably didn't do a very good job of defining that up front, but in the context of this session, when we talk about AI, we're talking about generative AI. There's different kinds. We're specifically talking about generative AI, and generative AI is used in something called large language models. These are kind of complex models, essentially kind of reference all kinds of things in the background. I won't go too much into the kind of technical aspects of it right now. And there's a number of them available. You've got ChatGPT, which is one of the more popular ones. You've got Claude, which is by a company called Anthropic. And then you've got Gemini, which is Google's large language model as well. And within each of these large language models, they have kind of sub-models or processing models that you can use. And each one has strengths and weaknesses depending on what you want to use it for. So ChatGPT, two of the models that I find best are the O3 model. This is my preferred model for anything to do with meeting transcripts, just because it's I forgot the term now. I'll have to come back to that. It's a model that will go away and do a lot more of the analysis for you. I'm trying to find the exact term. It's a reasoning model. There we go. That one slipped my mind for a second, which means it will do some more complex reasoning. It won't just kind of jump straight in with an answer, which when we're giving it information like meeting transcripts, we need it to do. Whereas the 4.0 model is kind of I guess you call it the general model. That tends to be much better for writing, whether that's kind of social media content or whatever it might be. You've also got the Claude model, the Sonnet Opus 4. I find that this model is best for visualizing data. It creates some really nice, interesting graphs and visual dashboards if you've got kind of financial data or survey data that you want to feed into there. So there's a number of different models available. Really depends on personal preference. But like I said, for me, when it comes to using AI to analyze meeting transcripts and to create all of the things that we kind of touched on at the beginning of the session. The O3 model is my preferred one for most of that work. You've also got the O3 Pro model. It's better for certain types of things. It's much slower because it goes and does like some kind of deeper research in the background. So where possible, I would stick to the O3 model for anything to do with meeting transcripts. Now, there's obviously a number of important security considerations when it comes to feeding meeting transcript data into a model like ChatGPT. The first thing to consider is data minimization. So what that essentially means is only putting in the information that you think is valuable. So if there's an hour-long transcript, but actually you know that there's only really 15 minutes worth of stuff that you would like the AI to analyze and another 45 minutes isn't that helpful, or there's nothing in there that's of value, then it's probably appropriate to kind of take some of that information out and only put in what you need to. The second thing is making sure that the data that you put into tools like ChatGPT isn't used to train the model. What that essentially means is that these guys aren't going to be able to see the data and they're not going to use that in order to train their large language model, where potentially it will then get exposed to other people. So ChatGPT on the Teams plan means that your data isn't used to train the model. I also believe that any of the Claude subscriptions, unless you specifically opt in or provide feedback on a prompt or something that didn't work, none of the Claude models also use data to train. None of the Claude models also use data to train their large language model. So it's worth keeping that in mind as well. Some other really simple things, making sure you use two-factor authentication on any accounts where you might have multiple people accessing it. So if you have multiple people in your team accessing a ChatGPT account and you're feeding kind of client meeting transcript data into there or any kind of client data, then it's worth making sure you have 2FA enabled, just because you don't want somebody to log in that shouldn't have access and shouldn't be able to log in. And then the kind of fourth and final thing is just making sure that any privacy notices, for example, on your website or in your engagement letters, are updated with any of the additional data processes that you're using. So this is probably more relevant in the UK for GDPR. You just need to consider adding things like ChatGPT or Claude or whatever into these notices and engagement letters as an additional data processor, so that when your clients are signing up, they understand exactly where their data is going. So it's probably nothing new to you guys. You would do this for other tools. And for example, if you were doing things like outsourcing and offshoring, this also might be a consideration for you as well. Okay, so hopefully you've managed to keep up so far. I know that we've covered a lot of ground in the kind of 30 minutes or so that we've been running up till now. I guess just do a quick pause and a bit of a recap. So the first thing we looked at was the value of meeting transcripts. What are some of the things that live in there that we can extract out? You've got questions from clients, advice, testimonials, processes, client sentiment, etc., etc. There's so much that lives within these meeting transcripts. We also looked at some of the tools you can use, Vinyl being one, but also some of the more generalist tools like Zoom, Teams, Fireflies, AutoFathom, etc. And then we've just done a really quick run through of what successful prompt engineering looks like and how to build a perfect prompt every time. Now, to save you guys time, and to, I appreciate that you might not have the luxury of being able to spend a few hours playing around in ChatGPT doing these kinds of things. I've actually gone and built 3 swipeable meeting transcript prompts that you can use right away. So these are prompts that have been built out following that process that I shared earlier, that I'll provide to you in a document that you can literally copy paste into whatever model you want to use along with your meeting transcript and start to do some really interesting things with them. So I've broken it down to a few sections. I've got some operations and process prompts. So one of them is an action item extractor, runs through the transcript and it pulls out all of the action items, assigning its due dates. The second is an SOP generator, a standard operating procedure. So it will listen to the transcript and it will help you to turn that into a process that you or your team can follow again. The third is a discovery call data extractor. So sounds quite complex. Essentially what this means is that whenever you have a discovery call with a client, it will give you a really nice table basically saying, here is everything you need to know about the client. So type of business, size of business, pain points, etc., etc. So anything you ask in a meeting, it will pull that out into a really nice table. And then you could use that to update your CRM. You could use it to build your scope of work, whatever you need to do. The second section is marketing and content prompts. So we've got a LinkedIn idea generator, a blog outline builder, a case study builder, and an FAQ generator. So much marketing content can be created off the back of meeting transcripts. And I've got some prompts there. And I think I'm actually going to demo the LinkedIn idea generator for you in just a few moments' time. The third section is client service and upsell. So one of them is a new service opportunity finder. It will go through the transcript. It will cross-reference it to your existing service library, and it will identify opportunities to deliver services that your clients might be interested in that you're not currently thinking about. The second is a cross-sell email draft. So it will review the transcript and it will draft an email to the client to cross-sell them or upsell them, whatever one you want to use, an additional service that you might have discussed within that meeting. And then the third one is client sentiment analyzer. So it will review, are they positive? Are they negative? What are they saying? How is it landing? Is there anything you should be worried about for this client? And then the fourth section is all about coaching and feedback. So these are prompts that you would use potentially on transcripts from your team members meetings. So if you have team members that you're trying to train to be more involved in client meetings and take on some of those client meetings or sales meetings themselves, and you want to be able to deliver coaching and feedback, but you're not actually in the meeting with them, then these prompts here will essentially allow you to review their transcript and provide some really nice actionable feedback points and coaching points depending on what was said. So I've got one for discovery calls, I've got one for interviews, and I've got one for client meetings as well. These are really, really nice because they help you to spot blind spots that you might not have thought you had or might not have thought they had in the first place. So again, I'm going to give you all of these on a document in just a few slides time. But in the meantime, I want to just quickly demo two of them for you so that you can get a feel for how they work in practice. So this is the document I was referring to. Got a full guide on prompt engineering, all of the 6 steps that we looked at earlier, as well as all 13 prompts I kind of outlined on the slide there. With each of the prompts, I indicate what model I would recommend using. Most times it tends to be the O3 model from ChatGPT. There are some occasions where I would recommend using a different model. Okay, so first example, LinkedIn idea generator. How do we take a meeting transcript and extract out ideas for LinkedIn posts from that meeting that you had with a client? So I'm going to copy paste in the prompt from the guide. It says you're a specialist content strategist. It's asking you to indicate if you've got any specific niches that you work with, because again, that's going to be really helpful context for the GPT. And then input materials is basically just your meeting transcript. So I've got a sample transcript that I created, a meeting between myself and Mary. And what it's going to do is it's going to analyze this transcript, and using the process and framework that I gave it in the prompt, it's going to try and extract out some ideas for LinkedIn posts. So just going to let it do its thing. It's reviewing all of the transcript items. It's looking for kind of key themes and key post ideas that might be within that specific meeting transcript. And what it's then going to do is it's going to pull all of that stuff out, and it's going to give it to me in a really nice, easy to use format that I can take, and I can either use it myself to write the LinkedIn posts. You might then plug that into another GPT and say, help me write the LinkedIn post using this. Or you might hand it off to an external marketing agency if you have one, or a freelance marketer that you work with. Because obviously one of the big challenges is making sure that they know what they're writing about. Whereas if you have the meeting transcript as the source information, you can pretty much guarantee that they're going to write about the right thing every time the words have come from your mouth. And so you can see here, it's going to pull through a couple of ideas. So one of them is turning seasonal peaks into year-end profit. The other one is about capital allowances. There's also one about apprenticeship incentives to help solve staffing issues, something about cash flow friendly growth, and then one here about guarding your gross margin like a pro. And for each of those post ideas, it's giving you a couple of key bullet points in terms of what to cover. It's just jumped off there, as well as some quotes from the meeting transcript as well that you might want to include within the LinkedIn post. So that's taken just a few seconds, and already it's giving you 4 or 5 different LinkedIn posts that might last you a week, they might last you 2 weeks, depending on how frequently you post. The second example is client sentiment. So what this prompt will do is it will analyze the meeting transcript. It will pull out what it deems important themes for the client, some important things that they mentioned that you should potentially be thinking about and talking about with your team, as well as analyzing their overall sentiment and how they feel about things. So we're going to copy paste the prompts in from the guide, and then we're going to put the transcript from the meeting in at the bottom as well. And then similar to last time, it's just going to go and do its thing. It's going to analyze all of the transcript, and using the kind of framework and the task within the prompt, it's going to look out for those specific concerns or themes, as well as the general sentiment towards it. And for both of the examples that I've just shown you, I'm using the O3 model, which is why you can see this box that pops up on the screen that kind of shows you the thinking. And this is why it's called a reasoning model, because it almost walks through its own reasoning to make sure that it's on track. You can see here it says overall sentiment positive. One of the themes is year-end tax planning. There's a quote in there that says, I better increase what I'm setting aside. It's quite a jump from the 19% we paid before. I'm just going to jump back to that because it clicked off a bit early. You can say that that's a high importance. The second one is about staffing capacity. She says that she's struggling to find people to recruit. That's also a high priority. And then the third one is expansion and revenue growth. There's a nice quote there. And that one is a medium priority. It's determined that that one isn't as a higher priority as the other two. So again, a really nice simple prompt. And you could use this information to update your CRM to say, last conversation we had with Mary, these were the three things that were of most interest to her, and then maybe someone in the team can follow up with her in 30 or 60 days and check in and see how she's getting on with those. So there's so much that you can do with this information once you extract it. So I've mentioned a few times, I kind of showed you a couple of slides ago that we do have a free guide available that has all of this information in. So it has a step-by-step framework to creating prompts. It has that custom GPT that I showed you that allows you to create the perfect prompt every time. And then the third thing is it has those 13 swipeable templates that you can use to start turning meeting transcripts into actionable stuff right away. If you can't scan the QR code, the link that you need for this is pages.usevinyl.com. So that URL is pages, Pages, .usevinyl, USEVINYL.com. And if you go there, you'll be able to access all of the things that I've just spoken to you about there. I'll just leave this on the slide for a couple of seconds more in case anybody else is trying to scan it and access the guide. If for whatever reason you can't get in, you're not able to access this, feel free to connect with me on LinkedIn or send me an email afterwards, and I'd be very happy to share that with you. So that brings me to the end of this session. Thank you very much for sticking with me and listening. We've got 3 minutes left, so I'm just coming up to time. There was a lot of ground covered there. I know that we kind of went deep into a few topics that maybe you weren't all that familiar with, like prompt engineering, etc. But it's really important to understand how this stuff works. You might not have time right now to sit there and spend hours in tools like ChatGPT. I completely get that. I think just having a general understanding of how these things work is really helpful. And one of the things that I'm speaking to a lot of firms about right now is less about worrying about the actual implementation of this technology, because the reality is that for the most part, we're still very much in the early stages of the journey, and there's a long way to go before a lot of this stuff is truly actionable and will make a big difference. But just have a curious mindset, be curious, be playful, be willing to just go in and spend half an hour testing or trying something if you have the time, and just be open to the fact that it might not be perfect right now, but it's only going to get better and it's only going to improve. So thank you very much for listening. Hopefully this session has been helpful for you and you've learned a couple of new things. If you do have any follow-up questions, my LinkedIn is Jordan Vickery. You should find me on there. Or if you email me at jordan@usevinyl.com, I'd be very happy to answer any questions that you have. Enjoy the rest of the Growth Club Summit and hope to see you soon. Thanks.
Well, that was awesome. Maybe you're feeling overwhelmed by all that. I love this stuff, so I hope you enjoyed that as much as I enjoyed that. There's heaps of resources here, or if you want to go and check out what the team at Vinyl are doing, again, there'll be links there in the chat that you can go and check out. Ladies and gents, we're heading into our last session now. So our 4 p.m. session is a solo session. There's nothing else on, and it's a great session. I'm actually hosting this session myself with Rachel Fish and Kylie Parker. When things go wrong, running a business through chaos, crisis, and curveballs, this is going to be a deep and real session. So if you've ever had to lead your team or lead your business during personal crises of sorts, then this one would be for you. Highly recommend you come and check this one out. That is a wrap for this session. The next session and final session of the day starts at 4 o'clock. I look forward to seeing you in there. Have a great afternoon, and we'll catch up in just a few minutes or so. Speak soon.